There is a specific kind of silence that exists in the heart of a bureaucracy. It's the sound of a system humming perfectly, processing millions of data points, assuming that every human being on the other side of the screen is following the path of least resistance. But systems are built on math, and math has no peripheral vision. In May of 1999, a man named David Phillips found a crack in that math. He didn't use a brute force attack. He didn't write a line of malicious code. He walked into a grocery outlet in Davis, California, and he looked at a 25-cent cup of chocolate pudding. To the average shopper, it was a snack. To the airline industry, it was an $800,000 liability they never saw coming. David Phillips was a civil engineer. Engineers are trained to look at structures, bridges, dams, skyscrapers, and ask one question: where is the stress concentrated? Where is the single point of failure that, if pushed, brings the entire monolith screaming to the ground? He found that point in a promotion by Healthy Choice Foods. The deal was simple, a marketing gimmick designed to move units of frozen dinners and canned soup. Mail in 10 barcodes, get 500 frequent flyer miles. But there was a micro hook hidden in the fine print. An early bird special. If you redeemed the barcodes within the first 30 days, the reward doubled. 1,000 miles for every 10 barcodes. Phillips did the math in his head. Then he did it on paper. Then he did it on a calculator because he couldn't believe the system was this stupid. At 25 cents a cup, 10 cups cost him $2.50. Those 10 cups generated 1,000 miles. In the world of aviation, 1,000 miles is worth approximately $20 in trade value. Phillips had found a way to buy $20 bills for $2.50. And there was no limit on how much currency he could print. Most people find a loophole and they take a small bite. They get a free flight to Florida and they tell their friends at a barbecue. They are satisfied with a win. David Phillips was not most people. He was an optimizer. He didn't want a flight to Florida. He wanted the sky. He began the harvest. He drove. He spent his weekends scouring every discount grocery store in Central California. He wasn't looking for food. He was looking for inventory. When he found a store that carried the individual pudding cups, he didn't grab a few 4-packs. He asked for the manager. "I'll take everything in the warehouse, and I need you to order more." The clerks were confused. Some were suspicious. In 1999, the world was gripped by a strange, low-level fever called Y2K. People were hoarding bottled water and generators, convinced the digital clocks would reset and the world would end in fire. Phillips leaned into the paranoia. When they asked why he needed 12,000 cups of chocolate pudding, he didn't mention the airlines. He didn't mention the miles. He just looked them in the eye and let them believe he was a doomsday prepper with a very specific sugary sweet tooth. He bought 12,150 cups. But here is where the heist almost failed. Every heist has a bottleneck, the moment where the plan meets the friction of reality. For Phillips, the friction was physical. To claim the miles, he had to mail in the barcodes, 12,150 barcodes. They had to be hand-peeled one by one from the plastic lids. If he didn't have them in the mail by the end of the month, the double miles bonus would evaporate, and David Phillips would be left with $3,000 worth of expiring dairy and a very angry wife. His family tried to help. His wife, his daughters. They sat in the garage until their fingernails bled. They peeled until their hands cramped into claws. By day 2, they had barely cleared a few hundred. Phillips realized that he had solved the math, but he had failed the logistics. He had 11,000 cups left and only days to go. He needed a dark pool of labor. He needed a way to scale his operation without paying a workforce. He called the Salvation Army. It was a move of pure, cold-blooded brilliance. He offered to donate the entire inventory, over 12,000 meals, to their food banks. But there was a condition, a processing fee. The Salvation Army would keep the pudding to feed the hungry. In exchange, their volunteers would peel off the barcodes and return them to Phillips in neat rubber-banded stacks. The charity saw it as a miracle, thousands of meals for the price of a few hours of peeling. Phillips saw it as a workforce. But there was a second layer to this move, a layer that involves the Internal Revenue Service. Under U.S. tax law, when you donate to a charity, you don't deduct the price you paid, you deduct the fair market value. Phillips bought the pudding on clearance for 25 cents. But the retail value, the price a normal person would pay at a high-end grocer, was 89 cents. By donating the pudding, Phillips generated a tax deduction of over $10,000. The deduction saved him roughly $800 in actual taxes. He had spent $3,140. He got $800 back from the government. He got $30,000 worth of food for the poor. And in his mailbox a few days later arrived the weapon that would change his life forever. 12,150 barcodes. To understand the panic that was about to hit the corporate offices of Conagra, the parent company of Healthy Choice, you have to understand what a frequent flyer mile actually is. It isn't a gift, it isn't a reward, it is a currency. Today, the major airlines, Delta, American, United, are not transportation companies. They are banks that happen to own airplanes. When you swipe your Chase or Amex card, the bank pays the airline roughly 1.5 to 2 cents for every mile they give you. The airlines print these miles out of thin air. It costs them nothing to create, but they sell billions of dollars worth of them to banks every year. It is the most profitable product in the history of commerce. It has higher margins than software, higher margins than cocaine. Healthy Choice had designed this promotion to attract low-value customers, people who would buy 2 frozen lasagnas and forget to mail in the coupon. They never expected a high-frequency trader. Phillips didn't just participate in the promotion, he hijacked the mint. He was printing their currency at a 90% discount. When Phillips's submission hit the processing center, the system stalled. 1.25 million miles. In the airline industry, this is what they call a black swan event. It was enough miles to grant Phillips lifetime elite status. Inside Conagra, the legal team was scrambled. They needed to stop him. If they honored this, they were effectively handing this man a blank check for first-class travel for the next 50 years. They looked at the terms and conditions. They looked for a maximum per household clause. There wasn't one. They looked for a minimum purchase price clause. There wasn't one. They looked for fraudulent intent. But how can it be fraud when the customer does exactly what the advertisement tells them to do? The story began to leak. The Los Angeles Times picked it up, then Wall Street Journal, then CNN. Suddenly, the pudding guy was a folk hero. He was the man who had out-engineered the engineers of capitalism. If Conagra or the airlines fought him now, they wouldn't just lose the math, they would lose the PR war. They would be the billion-dollar bullies who tried to cheat the man who fed the Salvation Army. They blinked. The miles hit his account in batches, United, Northwest, Delta, but the bulk of it, over 1 million miles, went to American Airlines. David Phillips became a million miler. He received a card in the mail, a black card. It gave him permanent, lifetime gold status. It meant he would never wait in a line again. He would be the first to board. He would be the first to be upgraded. He would have access to the private lounges, the free food, the open bars. He had bought a first-class life for the price of a used 1995 sedan. Over the next 20 years, Phillips took his family on over 40 international trips. He took them to Europe for Easter. He took them to Barcelona for the summer. He took them to London just to see a play. While the rest of the world was stressing over luggage fees and middle seats, the pudding guy was reclining at 35,000 feet, sipping a drink, thinking about the math. You cannot do what David Phillips did today. The pudding hack was a moment in time, a brief window between the analog world and the digital one. Today, promotions are managed by AI. They are geofenced. They have limits hidden in 50-page digital contracts that you accept with a thumbprint. The system has learned. It has patched the glitch. Others tried to follow in his footsteps. In 2008, a group of travel hackers found a way to buy $1 coins from the U.S. Mint using rewards credit cards. They would buy $50,000 in coins, get the miles, and then drive the coins straight to the bank to pay off the card. The government was literally shipping them free miles in heavy boxes. But it lacked the elegance of the pudding. It lacked the human element. David Phillips still has the miles. He still has the status. He is a reminder that the world is governed by rules, but rules are just lines of text written by people who think they've considered every variable. But they haven't. Somewhere, right now, there is another aisle 4. There is another misplaced decimal point. There is another civil engineer looking at a coupon and seeing a loophole. The system is humming. It thinks it's perfect. It's just waiting for someone to find the stress point.